You're in the right place at the right time, stretching from the distant spaceports of Batu, Tatooine, and Corellia, all the way to the bright center of the galaxy at Imperial Center, slamming into your hollow projector like a supercharged nanoparticle of coaxium. This is the Star Wars Unfiltered podcast. I'm John, he's Jason. We are here to bring you your needed dose of Star Wars film, TV, book, comic, gaming, and collecting news. The date is September 19th, 2021. And we got some fun topics for you today. It's been a while since our last episode. What have you been up to, Jason?
Lots of Disneyland, actually.
Oh, that's right.
Because we got the new Magic Key passes.
Uh-huh.
And finally went on Rise of the Resistance.
Right, after it's been out for, well, not that anyone could go on it, but it was supposed to come out a while ago, and then now.
Well, no, it had been out. So that was the trick, because we had passes before the whole, pandemic thing started,
mm-hmm.
and it's kind of funny. I don't know if I told the story, but we went. I think it came out January, or it opened January of 2020.
That sounds right.
So
either that or March. It was right when close to COVID. I know
yeah,
that.
It was either. I think it was late January, if I remember correctly. But so it opened, and then we actually went to Disneyland. I think toward the end of February for my wife's or my sister-in-law's birthday. So we go, and my wife Brooke was like, "Oh, should we do a rope drop? Should we get there when it opens to try and get on Rise of the Resistance?" Her and her sisters had already been on it on a trip that they did like a week before, and I was like, "Nah, I don't want to wake up. I'll just it's not going anywhere. I'll go on it when things calm down a little bit. My Disneyland pass is good until October, so I got plenty of time." So we go. I don't go on Rise of the Resistance. In fact, I got sick from that trip, that Disneyland trip.
You did detail that in our Star Tours episode.
Yeah, because it was Star Tours that got me sick.
Right.
So I didn't, because Disneyland shut down like shortly after that.
Who would have thought?
I didn't get to go on. So, but now I've been on it several times. It's a really good ride. I think the original Star Tours still is my favorite ride, and Indiana Jones as well. But it's very good. I would say it's a better ride than a lot of other rides. And those two I mentioned, it's not my favorite, but it is a better ride. It is amazing.
If it was set during the classic trilogy era, would it be your favorite?
Yes. Yes, 100%. Yeah. I've thought about that. I actually mentioned that to Brooke. I said, if this had classic trilogy elements instead of sequel trilogy, this would be my favorite ride. But it's still very good. It's very well done, and So anyway, lots of Disneyland. I'm just about Disneyed out.
Wow, the opposite of me, where I'm hankering now after 2 years to finally. I still have not gone to Galaxy's Edge, and
I'm still having fun. I've just had my fill. Like, I don't need to go twice a week like I've been doing for the last several weeks since the passes came out.
That would take a lot out of you, and I have noticed, like, when I went to Disneyland in 2016, it's at our ages, it takes more endurance to struggle through a day and be on your feet all day. And because I think when I did do that, then I was there from 7 a.m. to about 11 p.m. And I didn't sit down very much. It was just a lot of walking. And
it's such a good feeling, though. Like, at the end of the day, when you get home and your legs are all spent and you just get to relax. That's one of the reasons I've been going so much, or we've been going so much, is we like the exercise and stuff. But it's also a very good time to go because school started, and there's like a reservation system and all this other stuff, but it's like the lines are very easy right now. Yeah. So
well, it's even easier for you considering how close you live.
Yes.
Whereas being in Orange County, when I say I've been there for 12 hours and then I have to drive 2 hours back up the coast through LA, and that's what really pushes me to the edge of my
Oh,
threshold
yeah, for sure.
every time.
And that also means that you have to squeeze more out of the trip too, because
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
if you don't have like a pass and go anytime, it's like, I gotta
Yeah,
get everything
it's
done.
when I was a kid growing up in Ventura and then Ojai later, it was always like we would always leave close to dawn. It was
Mm-hmm.
because we wouldn't get there until 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
or 8 a.m. or whatever at the
Yeah.
earliest. A
Yeah.
lot of times we wouldn't get to Disneyland until I think when going with my sisters when they had passes, a lot of times we wouldn't get there until noon, because it was just like they aren't fast at getting ready or getting up, and you got to drive 2.5 hours. So yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I've had an interesting month.
I did want to say one more thing about it.
Yeah,
I feel like the rides at Disneyland is possibly going to be the gateway for my daughter into Star Wars. I think that might be
interesting.
the vector for.
Did she really resonate with the rides?
She likes them. She's
Hmm.
pretty good at the Millennium Falcon ride,
Hmm.
um, the Smuggler's Run or whatever the heck it's called.
Right. Right.
Pressing the buttons and stuff. And she likes
Yeah,
the porgs. They got the little shoulder porgs they're selling now, and she
I
wants
like
one of those.
porgs.
It
I'm a
just
porg fan.
it just sucks because she like wants a porg. I'm like, "Oh, look, you haven't even watched that movie," and I'm like, and I don't even want to show you that movie. Like of all the movies, that's the one I don't want to
You
watch.
you could do an interesting experiment though, and I think which is a lot of parents nowadays. You could give, because she's like what is Generation Z? I don't even know what her age would be considered.
It
A.
cycles over. It's alpha or whatever.
Okay, so she's Generation A. You could have her have her own version of where you start at 7, 8, and 9,
I'm not
and
doing
then
that. You're
classic
supposed no
trilogy would
no.
be her prequels, where it's like, let's see the backstory, of what came
But
before.
what would that be like? I don't even know what it'd be like to go
No,
and be like, wow, the prequels are so good. Like this is amazing. They're like so much better than
I
my
know, right?
original trilogy.
I just wish that I could erase my brain and do these experiments because I have an interest even outside of Star Wars of perception and
Hmm.
like perceiving things differently based on knowledge and who knows you or who like read definition. I really like that concept. So it's Star Wars is one of those things where it's like where do you start?
I'm gonna have to,
Classic.
yeah, I joke about the whole like, in that sense the prequels would be better, or whatever.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
actually, I'm going to think about that more because I know that there's the whole idea of like, well, if you now you should start from episode one because then you don't get the Vader Luke father reveal. Like that
Yeah,
doesn't exist in that sequence. But the
the
what
downfall of
happens,
Anakin
yeah,
Skywalker is
the
a surprise.
Anakin thing turns into a surprise and then you don't know. Like you see Anakin fall,
Yeah,
what happens to Luke, and especially when if you know that there's a 7, 8, 9, then you're like, oh crap,
exactly.
is Luke? So that's interesting. But then I'm gonna have to give more thought to that of what happens if you watch 7, 8, 9, and then you
By
go back.
themselves.
Right, you
Yeah,
watch those first, and then you go back and watch either 4, 5, 6, and
yeah.
then 1, 2, 3, or you do 1 through 6. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about how that would work.
The
So.
reason I originally thought of that was I was kind of thinking how Star Wars, we've talked about in the past, most Star Wars stories, especially New Hope, start in media res, where it's in the middle, like a serial, and
Hmm.
it is like picking up in the middle of a story, like, oh my God, the Star Destroyer is attacking these rebels. Like, what? That was the previous adventure we didn't see
Hmm.
because we missed last week's serial, at the
Right.
theater. And yeah, like episode 7, I mean, you would just jump right in. And some people have issues with that with other movies, like, I didn't get this explained to me, and it's like, well, that's the fun of it. You don't need, what, a perfect example of that, and this ties into what I was doing the last few weeks. Better Call Saul. So that's been my lately my obsession because I had never seen Breaking Bad other than the pilot. I had never seen it nor Better Call Saul, other than a few samples here and there. That's a show, Better Call Saul especially, that each episode is almost nonsensical plot wise. You just kind of jump around from scene to scene, character to character. But there's a lot of scenes of very strange things that they don't explain anything and they just throw it at you. And it's always confusing. And it's not even until later that episode or even few episodes later, you're like, oh, that's what was going on. And some people just don't like that. I'm a person, I enjoy that kind of confusion sometimes. It depends probably on what media it is or what movie, but that's a good example right there. And but that wouldn't always work for everything, that's its own thing. But yeah, I've been binging Better Call Saul. I saw everything they've released so far up through season 5, and then I'm still working on season 6. Thank God Bob Odenkirk is okay after his little mini heart attack he had over the summer.
That was pretty hairy because it was like not a lot of information right at first.
Yeah,
so you're like, oh,
he just
geez.
collapsed.
Yeah.
It was like, oh shit. But no, I guess it was like a small heart attack because he was hospitalized. But now he tweeted or messaged something recently saying, "I'm all great, everything's fine. They've resumed working on season 6, and that's supposed to come out early next year, I think." And then obviously I picked up Breaking Bad because I had seen. What I did was I watched season 1 of Breaking Bad. I should have just watched Better Call Saul, but I was like, whatever. I watched season 1 of Breaking Bad, did Better Call Saul. Now I'm back into Breaking Bad. I finished season 2 and 3. I think I have 2 more. Is it 5 or 6 seasons? I think it's 5. But
yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, so I got 2 more seasons, and then after that, I'll see the El Camino movie. So yeah, I've really been enjoying it, and other than a couple things, I'm not spoiled on it. And that was the thing that kept bugging me over the years was like, it's been out now so long. It ended in like 2013. And I was like, eventually I'm going to bump into some spoiler. And I will have wished I watched it. And it's only a matter of time because everyone's seen the show and everyone likes it. And it's like, I should just fucking watch it and just preserve everything.
Yeah, but I don't know that there's anything to really spoil.
I don't know. I guess I'll find out in a
there's
week or
not.
two.
I don't think there's any real twists. There's like big things that happen, but not like.
Well, there's certainly things I've seen so far where I'm like, wow, I'm glad I didn't know about that. It's just more fun to just jump in and experience it with the flow of the story and the characters and just like, go along. Now, one thing I had forgotten, not to go on too long about this on our Star Wars podcast, but one thing I had forgotten was the guy that plays Hank, the DEA guy. I forgot that he was
nerve.
Tony. Yeah, I forgot that he was fucking Tony in Total Recall. I was like, oh shit.
Yes.
And Luke was talking, and then he's been in so many things. Of course, he was in Starship Troopers as one of the the military guys in the office.
Yeah.
So Verhoeven's used him.
Times. he's one of those like character actors that has been in a lot of things, and then he was finally in something where his character was big. Yeah, and then like you're like, oh, you go watch other things, and you're like, oh my gosh, he was in this and that and the other. It's
the same thing with Bob Odenkirk because I looked at his credits and I'm like, dude, he was in The Cable Guy in like a super small part. He's one of the family of Matthew Broderick's family. He's like an uncle or brother or something, just there playing the charades with them. And he might only have a line or two. And then he has a very, very small cameo with David Cross in The Truth About Cats and Dogs, which is a romantic comedy with Janine Garofalo, where you see them in a bookstore in the background and the camera lingers on them for a couple seconds and then the scene ends and that's it. But I was like, oh shit.
So well, comedy and comedians like to, use their buddies.
Yeah.
In their movies.
I think that was it because David Cross has another part in the movie as a guy on the phone, and then I think he was involved in the script on some level.
Well, and him and Odenkirk had that show, Mr. Show.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So
there you go. And I think that was starting right around that time that movie came out. So
yeah,
that made sense. So anyway, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad. I'm absorbing them, and I should be finished in the next couple weeks with the latter. So. Good times. There's been some interesting Star Wars news lately.
Has there?
Uh, yeah. Knights of the Old Republic is being either remade or rebooted. They've released a cinematic reveal teaser trailer, which features Darth Revan or Revan, and it there's been a lot of confusion online as to whether this is a full remake of the graphics and they're keeping the exact same game, which could possibly be the case, or is this just a reboot and they're totally redoing a story with the same characters, and then like kind of like what they did with Battlefront and some other franchise games where it's just like here's the name, it's just Knights of the Old Republic 2022, or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to be concerned and worried that they're going to
As they
change
should be.
things. Yeah. And I mean, my initial reaction would be, why would they do that? Like, why would you invest in making those changes versus just, update the engine, update the textures, the graphics,
Yeah.
reuse everything else and just put out the game because that's what people probably want, or but
Yeah.
they did mention that they're getting like voice actors back.
I heard
um
about that.
they mentioned Jennifer Hale returning to voice
Mm-hmm.
Bastila.
Bastila.
So then that makes me think, well, what are they changing? Like, are you redoing all the voice work? Like, are you just altering some things?
I if I had to put money down on this, like right now, just with what I know, I would bet that they want the best of both worlds. They want that IP, that name, because that pulls in everybody. This is the number one game on just about every list you look at on YouTube or online. KOTOR is always number one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still playing my game over the last few years. I'm like a third of the way through, but I certainly wouldn't consider it number one, but I'm biased because I'm playing it late and I have other top fives and top
Yeah,
tens.
yeah.
But it's certainly a great game, and obviously that IP is going to pull in people. So maybe by releasing a teaser right now and not saying much, maybe they're kind of testing the waters and seeing how people react and what they say and kind of getting some feedback, and then maybe that's what they'll use as the model for how they go. Maybe this is initially just an idea to update the graphics, and maybe based on feedback, if people want a new, I mean, they do want a new game. They've wanted a new Knights of the Old Republic, but why no one calls anything KOTOR 3 anymore, or TIE Fighter
Well,
2?
it's my understanding that um, the MMO Star Wars: The Old Republic is essentially Coder 3.
It is, because BioWare and
So
it's still Legends actually too. It's the only Legends
right,
continual Legends thing that's pumping out new stuff
yeah.
since 2011. The only thing other than a couple like Marvel comics and stuff. But uh and it's funny how you and we're both separate from that. We've never played KOTOR Online or Old Republic.
I
And
played a little bit. I when it
okay.
first came out, me and my buddies were like, "Yeah, let's play it," and we played for like a month, and then that was it.
Okay.
Kinda,
Okay. Oh, so a month. You played it then full on.
yeah. I mean, a bit. I don't even remember what I got my character to. It was just it was too much like World of Warcraft. It wasn't its own thing. So,
Yeah.
and of course,
Yeah.
you and me both missed the boat on Star Wars Galaxies. So, and that
Yeah,
was
I
supposed to be
didn't start.
amazing.
Yeah, I didn't start playing that until almost 2 years ago when obviously because there's the fan servers that have
Yes.
kind of propped up Star Wars Galaxies. It doesn't have all the content of the original, but it has a good portion of it. And
Hmm.
I've been dabbling in that. I now that you mention it, I haven't logged in months, so it's kind of like my Battlefront 2, my Xbox. That thing's collecting dust, and I haven't played anything
Hmm.
on there since Jedi Fallen Order, which was
Well,
already a
I
while
tell
ago.
you,
So.
what you won't be playing on the Xbox One anytime soon, and that is the Coder remake, because it's PlayStation
Yeah,
exclusive, timed exclusive.
just right, which is what, a year or so, I think.
Usually it's something like that.
Usually it's a year. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. You know, it won't really matter. It's going to be another Star Wars game I play a year or 2 or 3 years down the line. It's like, whatever, dude. I'm still slogging through all the other X-wing versus TIE Fighter. You know, I
I
haven't
don't
even played Jedi Outcast.
I don't know if because I had started playing Coder. I bought it a long time ago. I started playing it, never got very far, finished it, got
Yeah,
distracted by other stuff. I don't know if this remake or reimagining or whatever it is, if that would get me to play it. I mean, obviously, I don't have a PlayStation 5,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's not, I'd have to wait,
I'd certainly
however
be
long after,
interested.
but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know,
I
maybe
definitely,
maybe it will get me to finally sit down and play the original.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to keep playing my saved game. I haven't logged in on that in almost 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
I started it in late 2017 because I'm like, I'm
Oh,
finally
you're just
gonna
gonna have to
like,
restart because you're not gonna know
no.
what's going on in the
Oh, no, no,
story.
no. I don't want to restart because I had a long period between my logins and I was fine. It didn't, nothing was, I didn't like forget anything because it's
Nah,
pretty,
I don't know. You got to restart, just like
no,
Black Fleet
no, no,
Crisis. You got to
no.
reread the
I'm not
first book.
fucking restarting KOTOR. I'm like 16 hours in. I'm
You're
not
gonna you're
fucking
gonna
restarting.
replay that first 16 hours like 3 times.
No, that's why they have YouTube, so I
That's
can
true.
watch
Yeah.
someone's. It's not like a book where I mean, yeah, there's the audio books, but to hear an unabridged version, no, I'm just gonna pick up my save game. I remember where I am. I'm on Dantooine at the Jedi training compound, and so yeah, I'll just jump
Oh,
back in.
okay.
But what the reason I mentioned that was a few years ago, I was like, I never did fully delve into the post Tales of the Jedi Old Republic stuff. All I'd ever experienced was the original 5 or 6 Tales of the Jedi comic series that I've owned the trade paperbacks for.
Yeah.
And then I think I did read Jedi versus Sith, which came out in like 2001, and then obviously the audio dramas and stuff like that. But I was like, I really should go back and go through those things because there's like the Old Republic novels. There was obviously the Darth Bane trilogy I've always wanted
Hmm.
to read. So it's a side thing with my other Star Wars timeline shit that never gets finished. But it's just one of those things I got to chip away. And I did start with the in Legends canon. There's that what's that one book? It's the first book on the timeline. It's a novel. And
I don't remember.
I'm drawing a blank right now, but basically, that came out near the end of Legends. Oh, it's called Dawn of the Jedi, and it had some tie-in comics also, but it's the subtitle is Into the Void, and that deals with the basically the birth of the Jedi, or shortly after the Jedi come to being, and they had a tie-in comic series and everything, and they were going to have more going, and it starts 25,793 years before New Hope. So this is like 20,000 years before Tales of the Jedi even. And they were going to continue that with Dark Horse and more novels. And then Disney bought Lucasfilm. And all that story that they were building up to be its own thing kind of just fell by the wayside. Just like that one video game, Star Wars 1313.
Yes.
And whatever, that's a whole thing. But it would be interesting. Whatever happens with this Knights of the Old Republic, more is gonna, I'm sure, be revealed in the coming months. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think
Maybe it'll be out before 2030. With how long
yeah,
games take to develop, even if it's like a
I
remake,
know.
this could still be like 2 years out, and then that timed exclusive. It could be another year before regular people get to play it.
Right. And we have another game to talk about, don't we, Jason?
Oh yeah, the TIE Fighter total conversion update. They've
That's right.
continuing to update that.
Right. If you go to the guy's YouTube channel, Angel, he talks about he does updates every so often, and he said they're going to do a new intro cutscene which uses animation from a fan, and it was the guy that did that TIE Fighter anime short film kind of thing that was 5 minutes long or whatever back in, I think that was like 2013 or 2014. It was like a while ago now.
Yeah, Paul Johnson.
That's it. And
Ota King. Ota
oh
King,
man,
I think is his handle.
That fan video was so amazing and perfectly captured the anime feel of other series and stuff.
I just want a show that's that. That's what I want.
I know.
It would take me right back to the 80s of like that, you know, that style of animation coming out of
Voltron and Robotech.
Transformers, Robotech, all that stuff. Just
G.I. Joe.
Really scratches an itch for that.
I know it certainly does, and it's great to see that he's involved, because I kind of consider TIE Fighter Total Conversion to be semi-official in that it's using all the official elements to upgrade the graphics, and it's all using existing sounds from the Lucasfilm library. I mean, it's the closest thing you can get to a new TIE Fighter game, other than, you know, say Squadrons or something. But it's what we know and love. And they're working on a new fan campaign, which is set after the Hand of Thrawn duology. And I think you're working under Pelion in that fan campaign. And that's coming out at some point, I think. And it just looks exciting. The graphics are amazing. They're still working out the bugs since they released it a few months ago. And
I kind of lament not having tried it yet, but at the same time with these projects, it's kind of like sometimes it's just better to wait because they iron out all these issues. And me too. That's how I feel. And because he mentioned in this last update, they just worked out the missile issue because the proton torpedoes were either going too slow or too fast. It wasn't like the old TIE Fighter where it was perfect. So it finally cracked the coding on that, and it's starting to get better. He says they're currently working on the updates for the expansions of Defender of the Empire and Enemies of the Empire, because right now it's just the main campaign, I think. And wouldn't it be amazing if, like, through, you know, social media and stuff, this would never happen, but if they were able to contact like Scott Lawrence, Nick Jameson to like re-record the audio so it's like higher quality, and then even for Thrawn, get Lars Nicholson to record the line. Although in my head it's kind of like Boba Fett, right? Like obviously now Tamora Morrison is the voice of Boba Fett, and I accept that. Yeah, he's official. Yeah, the changes in the Fett lines in the Empire and stuff are right. It's fine, but Thrawn is, you know, he doesn't sound like Lars in TIE Fighter. He just sounds kind of like a gruff guy. Cool. But yeah. So I mean, it would be cool, but at the same time, it'd be like, you know, it's not the it's not the same.
I could see if this was like an actual Kickstarter thing and they had the approval of Disney or Lucasfilm, I could see that, you know, going down that road of getting the voice actors. But, you know, these guys are all doing it out of their own time and their own limitations.
You know, to be honest, you know, they have deep fake stuff for faces and stuff, and that looks really good. The stuff that people can just churn out on their home computer in their basement and stuff looks really good. Yes. If someone could get their hands on the audio synthesizer version of that, because I know it exists. I mean, you know, they talk about it in the Star Wars Gallery thing and stuff. If somebody could get their hands on that and then just feed in, you know, lines from different actors and stuff, and then make their own like deep faked audio for these games, these you know, these home these total conversions and these, you know, fan remakes and all that stuff, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing, and it would be like our dream of finally having an Arnold Schwarzenegger soundboard and doing phone calls.
more involved than just simple lines from Kindergarten Cop.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like I mentioned, I mean, obviously with Thrawn, it's like this kind of I can't even say who did the voice of Thrawn in TIE Fighter. I don't even know. But I know Nick Jameson did the voice of Palpatine. And
That's
Scott
right.
Lawrence did Vader, and I like their voices for that game and
Yep.
stuff. I would not want to replace their voices with like James Earl Jones or
Right.
Ian McDermott.
Yeah, it really fits that game so well. And Scott Lawrence, of course, also did Rebel Assault 2. He did Vader and a few things, and then Nick Jameson did the Emperor in the Dark Empire audio dramas, and he did like Behind the Magic too when you do the trivia
Yes,
thing, and
yes.
it was the Emperor.
Uh-huh. And he did, yeah,
Yeah,
and he even did Sidious, which I thought was interesting too, because it
yes,
is kind of a different voice, but they still got Nick Jameson
right.
because it's the same voice, obviously, because it's Ian McDermott, but it's still kind of different
I
than
remember that in your episode 1 Insider's Guide
yeah. Um,
because that was what that was in. That's a whole side tangent.
anyway, yeah, this is really exciting. I think that will be when I pull the trigger on playing this is when they finish that cutscene.
Same here, absolutely.
Because that
And
I really want to see what they do with that.
yeah. And as a side story to this, I didn't know about this until recently, but back in February, Limited Run Games actually did re-releases of X-Wing and TIE Fighter in a box with like a couple extras and things. And of course, both games sold out because they only had, what's that, 1,000 copies or
Yeah.
something like that. Limited Run Games has done some cool things in the recent past with re-releases of mostly 90s computer games, and sometimes I think they might have done console games here and there. Maybe not, maybe just PC games. But yes, if you look it up, just look up Limited Run Games, X-Wing and TIE Fighter. They have different boxes than the original boxes. They're
Right.
definitely made to look more modern and everything, but the X-Wing one has a big Rebel Alliance logo and it's kind of orange, and then the TIE Fighter one has the Galactic Empire logo. And yeah, I thought that was pretty cool to mention that and throw that in, because if I had known about that earlier this year, I would have had a whole news topic just on that.
They're definitely capitalizing on
The squadrons drop.
well, no, just the collectors of big box games.
Oh yeah,
in
like
that
us.
like the in the LGR vein, because LGR has a huge collection of big box PC games.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I can't say I'm a major collector of that. I have a few, but I've like over the summer, I think I briefly mentioned that I got a box of Imperial Pursuit, the X-Wing expansion, because I had always wanted that, and because I've had my Defender of the Empire box ever since I got it in the 90s, but I'm still looking for B-Wing. I'd still like to own that, and I know if you find sealed copies on eBay, it gets a little pricey, but nothing insane. It's usually like 40 or 50 bucks maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of cool. So hopefully sometime in the near future we'll get around to TIE Fighter Total Conversion and have an actual full review.
Well, whenever we get through these SNES games.
Yeah, I know, right? We've been recording Super Star Wars is finished, and we've started to record Super Empire Strikes Back. There will probably be more updates on that in the near future.
So it's a much harder game.
It's a much harder game. We're kind of chipping away at it. But yeah, time will tell what happens with that trilogy, because those two games after the first are just like insane, especially for our old asses that aren't as good as when we were teenagers.
Yeah, a lot of rust to shake off.
Shake off. Yeah.
Okay, finally, something popped up tonight, actually, as I was perusing Reddit, a excerpt from the new book on Howard Kazanjian, the producer.
Right, who produced Return of the Jedi.
Right. So there's a book. It was actually, was it Rinsler's final book?
Right, because he recently passed away.
He recently passed, which, sucks.
Yeah, he was a good biographer of a lot of these ILM and Lucasfilm guys.
Yeah, big time. So he wrote a book on Howard's life and stuff, and the foreword was written by Marcia Lucas, and then there's some other, I guess, I guess, interviews with people talking about certain stuff. I'm not
Hmm.
entirely sure if I don't think all of these excerpts came from the forward, but it was and this was on the saltier than crate subreddit.
Right.
So obviously it's going to have, hey, somebody shitting on the sequel trilogy. We're
Right.
gonna post this, but it was Marcia Lucas shitting on the sequel trilogy. She didn't
And
like
not
it.
just the sequel trilogy.
No, no. So that was the interesting thing. There was and the post on Reddit originates from a tweet from this guy Jedi Scum on Twitter.
Right. Right.
Posted the excerpts from the book.
Right. Right.
So I thought it was interesting just because um, from where I found it on Reddit, and of course, Reddit loves to uh, to make a big deal about Marcia Lucas's influence on A New Hope.
Right. There's that
And
whole video, the one that people had referenced. Star Wars was saved in the edit.
right, yeah, exactly. So anytime something on Reddit, anywhere on Reddit, because of course it's a big hive mind for the most part,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
if something comes up about Lucas and Star Wars, then invariably someone will mention that, oh, the only reason Star Wars was good is because Marcia Lucas
Marsha Lucas.
saved it in the edit and stuff. And um, so I thought it was funny to find this on to find it on Reddit, even though the original source wasn't Reddit. Um, and in these excerpts, there's one where she talks about not liking what they did in the sequel trilogy, killing Han,
Hmm.
which I think is funny because like that was kind of always a not a plan, but like obviously Ford wanted it.
It's been an idea for 30 plus
Yeah,
years, 30,
exactly.
40
This
years.
wasn't a new idea, but she didn't like it. In fact, she said it sucks. That's her words, which I thought
I
was
like how
funny.
eloquent she is.
I know, right? Like, don't pull any punches. So she didn't like that, but she also there's other excerpts, and she talks about not necessarily liking the prequel trilogy either, which I thought was interesting because,
Yeah,
uh,
let me actually read her prequel quote
oh
because I got it
yes,
right here. It's just so everyone knows exactly what we're talking about. She says, "Quote: George is, in his heart and soul, a good guy and a talented filmmaker. I wish he would have kept directing other kinds of movies. But when I went to see Episode 1, I had a friend who worked at ILM who took me as a guest to preview. I remember going out to the parking lot, sitting in my car, and crying. I cried. I cried because I didn't think it was very good, and I thought he had such a rich vein to mine, a rich palette to tell stories with. He had all those characters, and I thought it was weird that the story was about this little boy who looked like he was 6 years old, but then later on he's supposed to get with this princess who looks like she's 20 years old. There were things I didn't like about the casting and things I didn't like about the story and things I didn't like. It was a lot of eye candy CG. Um, so yeah, she was not a fan of the prequels.
yeah,
Um,
and it's interesting because it shows she really cared,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
Like she cared about the movies, about
Yeah,
the story.
yeah.
Obviously she cared a lot about George,
Mm-hmm.
being
There
her
was.
ex husband.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
wonder if some of that, I wonder if some of the, I guess I would say disappointment in it is, and
Mm-hmm.
it seemed like she was disappointed that he didn't continue directing stuff. Like he sort of
Right.
took a big break.
And
And
that's a whole side thing because we've, I think, even talked about how, well, I know other fans have, where if Star Wars was not the success it was, what other kinds of movies would Lucas had made? Would he have been making more experimental sci-fi like THX or comedies that are like American Graffiti? It's such an
right,
interesting what if scenario.
right.
But
Well,
because Star Wars became this massive thing and everyone focused on it and George loved it, he was like, well, maybe I'll just keep going down this Star Wars path. And it
yeah,
was like kind of like a distraction in a way. Because I
yeah,
know Lucas has said after he was done with the prequels, he was looking forward to making more experimental films and doing this and that. But all we kind of got was like Red Tails, which came out in 2000. 8, and he just produced it. I think he didn't.
There
That
was
was
there was
kind of
also
it.
that
So
fairy tale animated movie too. I don't remember what it was called, but I think he was
involved in
he
some
was
way.
producer on it, came up with a story or something like that.
So yeah, that's a
But
whole side
he
thing.
also
But yeah,
did say like a lot of them you probably won't even see. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
he was
yeah.
going to make
Right,
stuff that he's just going to make it to make it. It's going to be like student film type stuff.
right,
Um,
right.
but there's
So
also
what if?
the what if of like what if they didn't get divorced, right? Like what
Yeah,
because and not to say
we
that they
wouldn't have Temple of Doom and all the darkness and anger
you
in
wouldn't
the
have
Temple of
Pixar.
Doom. Yeah,
Pixar was
yeah,
born out of their divorce, and I'm not saying that they should have stayed together. Obviously that's
right.
that's between two
Yeah,
adults, and that's a whole thing. But I wonder if some of the sadness was the what if of like, oh, like we had to get divorced, but um,
yeah,
you know you should have kept making movies. What if the divorce had played a part in the direction
yeah.
of your career,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think it's a valid question to ask. And of course, what kind of subtext to this has Marcia carried forward to how she perceived the prequels? Because she's going to see him from a certain point of view, knowing George very well all those years and
But probably
having a
knowing
life
him
together.
better than most anybody.
Probably, yeah, exactly.
You
So,
know,
and he's not an easy guy to know. Lucas is kind of aloof. He's always been that way, where
yeah.
he has his sense of humor and we can kind of chip away at things, but he's not a very open person, you
Hmm.
know? So it makes me wonder, what she carried into her viewing of episode 1. And
Well, probably
obviously,
probably what a lot of people carried into it. I know I carried in a
yeah,
lot of hope, right?
yeah,
Like a lot of hype because
yep.
this was the
How could
first
we not?
time he was directing something
Yeah.
in like
I
20
remember that was a
years.
big deal. That was a big deal. And I remember, I think I first got confirmation of that, I believe, because throughout the mid 90s and the build up to the special editions, and of course, The Phantom Menace episode 1 was going to start filming summer 97.
Hmm.
There was this build up as to who's going to direct, who's going to direct. And George had been so down on directing ever since A New Hope,
Hmm.
and he talked about how much it was such a traumatizing experience and it was so unpleasant, and that's why he's always been a producer on everything after
Yeah.
and just kind of oversaw, as like a side person. But when it came to the actual day-to-day directing, he hated it. But I remember the confirmation I heard it was the Making Magic CD-ROM, which dropped in the fall of 96, and I think it was just an interview with him, and I think it was a little Easter egg after the credits run. There's a clip of Lucas saying like, "I will direct it,"
Yeah.
and I remember watching that with Daniel at his house on his computer and being like, "Whoa, Lucas! He's gonna direct.
He's
Like
back.
that's he's back," and it was just like, "Holy crap!" And then of course, what happens is the Phantom Menace comes out, largely disappointing. Not you and I per se, but like largely disappointing a vast swath of fandom. And I think people crapped on the idea of Lucas as a director after that movie. It became this big target. Like Lucas
Hmm.
can't direct. He can't do it. A New Hope was his last shot, and everything before that, that's his only good stuff as a director.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I think people are still just bothered by Jar Jar and midichlorians, and they're not focusing on what he's good at. Clearly, he himself knows his limitations.
Yeah.
He's mentioned them many times. I can't write dialogue. He said that.
Yeah.
So again, you have to look at what the strengths of Lucas are, which is like visuals and motion and set pieces, and it's kind of the larger tapestry. Don't focus on his limitations because he has them. They exist. They're real. So anyway, that's my
Um.
little thing. But
Yeah. So anyway, so her, she's obviously she cares about Star Wars a lot because she was involved in the inception of the first movie and
mm-hmm,
stuff.
mm-hmm,
Um, but it's not as if she comes in and says the sequels suck you know, and the prequels are so good. Like anything George makes is gold.
Yeah.
It's kind of a, I would say, semi-objective take on it.
Yeah, it gives levity to what she says
But
when
I
she.
suppose
Yeah.
I'll read what she said about the sequels so that
Yeah.
people know what we're talking about. I like Kathleen. I always liked her, says Marcia Lucas. She was full of beans. She was really smart and really bright, really wonderful woman, and I liked her husband Frank. I like them a lot. Now that she's running Lucasfilm and making movies, it seems to me that Kathy Kennedy and J.J. Abrams don't have a clue about Star Wars. They don't get it. And J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw that movie where they killed Han Solo, I was furious. I was furious when they killed Han Solo. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought, you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the magic of Star Wars. You're getting rid of Han Solo. And then at the end of the last one, The Last Jedi, they have Luke disintegrate. They killed Han Solo. I love how she says disintegrate.
Disintegrate.
Yeah. They killed Luke Skywalker, and they don't have Princess Leia anymore. And they're spitting out movies every year, and they think it's important to appeal to a woman's audience. So now their main character is this female who's supposed to have Jedi powers, but we don't know how she got Jedi powers or who she is. It sucks. The storylines are terrible. Just terrible. Awful. You can quote me. J.J. Abrams, Kathy Kennedy, talk to me. That was the excerpt. Now, obviously, this was.
Reddit is about to erect a Marcia Lucas statue as we speak.
Yeah, I know, right? But this was obviously this was before
The Rise of
Skywalker came out.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
after The Last Jedi. But presumably, she mentions that they don't have Princess Leia anymore. So presumably, this is after Carrie
died.
Carrie passed away.
And
so
she didn't know what they were going to do with Leia.
yeah, because I mean, that's what everybody thought is like, you don't.
Right.
What are you going to do? Like,
Yeah,
you've painted yourself into this corner.
Okay, so the thing is, when I read this, and then I read the comments under it on Reddit, the 20 or so comments, 20 or 30.
Well,
this was a huge vindication.
And remember, of course, the subreddit that I found this on was saltier than crate.
Than crate. Obviously, if you already hate the sequels, and then you read this, you're gonna feel vindicated. This is like, yay, you know, especially if you already heap praise upon Marcia Lucas for her editing of Star Wars.
Right, yeah, because clearly she saved Star Wars.
Yeah, she saved Star Wars. So, but the thing is, at the same time, there's so many. I could nitpick lots of things she says, but I'm not going to really bother because that's her opinion. Whatever. As someone who, I don't know if I would consider myself a sequel defender. I am more than you, but I try and just be objective. You know, like if someone hates it, cool. Like, those problems are valid.
I get enjoyment out of shitting on them. Right?
Just like I get enjoyment out of hating Apple. I play
exactly.
up the theatricality. I don't absolutely hate it as much as that, but I play up the theatricality.
Right.
It,
so I derive pleasure from shitting on it. I'll watch them, and you know, it's Star Wars, and I'll enjoy them for, you know, the bits that I can, you know, extract, you know, the little pieces of corn out of the shit. I like corn, so I'll pick the corn out of the shit, and I'll enjoy that. But anyway, whereas I feel like you are more like, guys, I'm just trying to enjoy Star Wars. Quit shitting on it all the time.
Yeah. Right. It's just, that's the thing, is that as I come across things on social media, Star Wars official pages and fan pages, there's so many people like intensely shitting on it to where they're not objective and they're just actively enjoying the shitting on people. That's the part where I get confused, because I'm like, well, there's things I really hate, but I don't go to fan pages and then log on and then leave these giant diatribes as to like why you're a piece of shit for loving this and blah blah blah. So I find it strange that some people invest so much time in vindicating their hatred over this. Like, my whole thing is just move on. It's just a trilogy. We still have 6 other movies that are great. Just move on. It's not a big deal. But sure, we're fans, so you and I, we're gonna get down into the trenches and we're gonna like duke it out with other fans sometimes over different things, because you and I, we defend the prequels all the time to people. So you know, uh man, all I can say is this certainly adds fuel to the fire.
Oh, it's great.
Her comment.
I love.
No, I think it is good. I think it is a good thing.
Yeah,
it doesn't change my personal opinion. What she says to me is valid, but there's nothing in it where I'm like, oh God, that sucks. You know,
well,
now I have
and
to defend it.
it's almost as close as you can get to like getting a genuine sort of take on everything from Lucas himself.
True.
Because obviously he is, I think he still is the what is it? He is the largest single shareholder of Disney stock.
Yes. He's still rolling in millions.
Obviously, he doesn't. It's not like he owns Disney, but as an individual, he owns more stock than any other individual owns in Disney as part of that deal. I know he's supposed to like sell off a bunch, but I don't know like where that is. So I think he still is. So he can't. He's not going to sit there and. We got as close as we did when he called
white slavers.
When he called them white slavers, that was as close as we got.
And when Lucas is honest like that, I love that he doesn't hold back. I mean, it's not that he was holding back, but he lets things slip like that. Like if he later apologized for that, but I think it's funny that he just kind of blurts these things, and then it's like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Right.
But he also said, and
that was before The Last Jedi came out.
Yes.
So I can only imagine what he'd say now.
Now, also, do you remember what Bob Iger said in his biography that Lucas said to him? It was after they had screened Force Awakens for Lucas, just Bob and George, maybe other people in the theater, I'm not sure. But George like turned to Bob and said, like, there's nothing original there. You just did A New Hope again. Like, what the hell was that?
I wish I could be a fly on the wall for stuff like that.
I know. But at least credit to Bob Iger, credit to him, and obviously he's left Disney now, so it's like he probably doesn't care as much as when he was CEO. But credit to him for actually being honest in that. There was that one interview where he said, yeah, we released too much all at once. We got excited. I regret that. I made a mistake. Credit to him for at least saying that, because there's so many CEOs of different companies in the past that would never in a million years
but even that
is
an adjusted statement. I don't think that he's misdirecting what the actual issue was, because what they wanted to do. So the issue isn't that they put stuff out. Well, okay. The issue is that they put stuff out too soon, not too
much at once.
Not too much at once. It was too soon, not too much at once. I think that's the distinction that he's not making. Is that what they wanted to do is emulate the Marvel model of at least a movie a year, which would have worked perfectly if it was executed properly, but they didn't execute it properly. They should have waited a year to start everything off.
Right.
Like even Abrams wanted that. He wanted more time.
Abrams had to fight. Kathy and JJ had to fight for December because it was supposed to be summer 2015. And that would give them like a year and a half from when they started. And they were like, no way, dude. Like, this is like a massive undertaking, and we're barely getting enough time as it is. And of course, that's just the fucking Disney shareholders. They want to scrape that money as quickly as they can. After they spent the how much did Lucas sell? Lucas
about a little over $4 billion.
That's what I thought. So they were like, "Oh my god!" And so this is the problem when corporations become involved with anything. This is a lesson. They're gonna just care about the end dollar.
Yeah,
that's people need to understand. I don't think Kathy is personally trying to ruin everything in Star Wars she can. I think she and a lot of people, they have good intentions. JJ has good intentions. Everyone's a fan on some level.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right. But the point being, when money and corporations become involved, it's this larger pressure that is then pushed down on Disney and them. And it's this upper level pressure that when Lucasfilm wasn't owned by Disney was only there from George himself. That was it. He was the only one putting pressure on different people, which he would do because we know he's pushed ILM and LucasArts and different companies to do more with less and to really squeeze things under that. Think of all the breakthroughs that ILM did on the prequels and
Mm-hmm.
all these things where John Knoll is like, George, we can't do that. And he's like, no, no, no. Just you can do it. And I can only imagine how many sleepless, bleary-eyed nights those guys had working on those movies. But anyway.
Yeah, that gets away. Okay, so we're way off what we were talking about with Marcia at this point. So
yeah, well, I knew this would open up a whole can of worms.
Yeah. We have to talk about that. But so the only other interesting thing in that statement about the sequel trilogy was, people might pick out the whole thing of like Han, like, oh, how can you kill Han? I mean, obviously, that was always kind of maybe not the plan, but like that was always Harrison's intention.
And also, even back during when The Empire Strikes Back was still being written, I think the original idea was to freeze Han in carbonite and not thaw him out. Like he might have just died like that. And I think some of that still had to do with contractually whether Harrison was going to stay for all three movies.
Right.
So,
but I mean, they managed to get Harrison back at least for the little scene in The Rise of Skywalker. So presumably, if they shook the Indiana Jones carrot in front of his face a little bit more, they might have been able to get him back for 3. But who knows? It's never been. I don't think it's ever been confirmed that like them killing him in The Force Awakens was because that was like some sort of deal they made with Harrison. That's just sort of the presumption that we've all made.
I would let's look at it this way. Lawrence Kasdan co-wrote Force Awakens with JJ. Obviously, they had an early treatment which had stuff from that one guy that co-wrote Little Miss Sunshine. But anyway, it was mostly JJ and Lawrence Kasdan. I would think that anything involving Han Solo, if you're going to have someone check that to make sure it's done right, Lawrence Kasdan would be the guy. This is the guy who, co-wrote, Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I would think that having his seal of approval, which is obviously why they hired him for The Force Awakens, that would be the key thing. And that's why I'm largely okay with Han's death, because I felt like it was poignant and it did serve the larger story of Kylo Ren and the dark side and all that. And I don't know. It's weird. I mean, Han Solo is one of my favorite characters, but I didn't feel cheated or anything.
I feel like, and she might not be saying this overtly, but I think most everybody's problem with Han dying in The Force Awakens was that we didn't get the reunion.
Yes,
like we all wanted.
I see that. Sure.
So, I mean, personally, what I think I would do in hindsight is push his death to about halfway through the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And then make that like you amp up that
the
darkness.
Cliffhanger.
Not even the cliffhanger, just have it like halfway through the movie and you're like, okay, this is getting really serious, But anyway, so, in general, I don't really have a huge problem with it other than we didn't get the reunion. That may be part of her problem with it.
That's valid.
I certainly didn't like them killing Luke the way that they did and when they did it and all that stuff. But
right.
Anyway,
and for more on that, you listen to our past podcast.
Right. I mean, like I said, I think this statement, the weight of it is just like I said, it's probably the closest thing you're going to get to Lucas's opinion, even though they have been married for 40 years,
some years,
nearly 40 years. So, but this is probably along the lines of Lucas's George's opinion on it.
Because
there's other people we can't pick their brains about it.
Right.
Kurtz.
Right.
I would really love to know what Kurtz would think about all this stuff. But
that's very true. In fact, maybe we should go digging through the archives and see if he said anything about the prequels. because I know he must have been interviewed
Well,
in the late
I'm going to take a
90s or
wild guess and say he probably didn't like him very much. He didn't much care for the Return of the
well,
Jedi. So
yeah, even Return of the Jedi. It's obvious that Lucas and Kurtz had a falling out after Empire. So
yeah, and I mean that's just a disagreement on direction of the
sure,
story and all that stuff.
sure. Yeah,
So there was something else. Yeah, getting back to Reddit's infatuation with Marcia and her role in Star Wars. There was an excerpt where she talks about her role. I'll just read what she said.
yeah.
Marcia has heard many times that George was the head and she was the heart of Star Wars, but she says that's not accurate. I wouldn't think so. I definitely made scenes work. I made the end battle work. I definitely had a lot to do with making it work, but I wasn't the writer and I wasn't the director. And I didn't come up with the creative names. Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, all those names are classic. George came up with all of it using his amazing imagination. Now, she doesn't come out, and outright refute that she saved the movie or anything like that.
Yeah.
But she does imply that she did make the end battle work, but
I can see that.
That's
she was co-editor along with what was his name, Walter Hike and the other guy, Richard Chew.
Well,
I'm
pretty sure Lucas had
and
input
Lucas too
on editing too. Like I think
the four of them. I think it was the four of them. There was an initial rough cut that's the one that looks really bad, and which is you see in the rough cut of the cantina and Behind the Magic.
And that was the guy, right? The guy they fired or
the guy
left
they
the project.
fired.
I can't remember his name,
Yes.
but I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is the fact that there was a rough edit made by.
This was, I think, early 1976. It was like January or February. And that was the rough cut that Lucas showed Brian De Palma, Martin Scorsese, and Steven Spielberg at the ranch. Or not the ranch, he didn't have it yet, but he showed it to them in LA or whatever. And everybody except Spielberg
It's his little ranch house in LA. This is the ranch.
Right. But they all hated it except Steven. He was the only person that saw the merit of the core of the movie, whereas everybody else was like, this looks like a terrible B movie, which, if you see that rough cut, that rough edit, the pieces of it that are out there, it is. It's not good. That's why the editing was sped up and it had more reaction shots and close-ups. And definitely look into, for anybody listening, look into the rough cut edit of Star Wars. And well, basically Star Wars was saved in the edit. That's the name of the video.
John Jimson was his name.
Yeah.
He was the original editor. He wasn't working out any,
I wonder what else he's edited, if he has a filmography listing.
Oh, let's take a look.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, man, I don't know.
I've never. Oh, A Fish Called Wanda. Oh, and King Ralph. I recognize those movies.
Okay.
Oh, Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay, all right. So he edited some comedies in the later '80s and everything.
Those are totally forgot about those King are the Ralph. Movies. I know, right?
I don't think I've thought about that movie in 30 years.
It's one of those movies that just exits your mind.
It was like Hot to Trot, where it exited my brain for 30 years. But
when you mention it, like I say, King Ralph, what do you think of? You think of John Goodman
sitting in a throne sideways
with that crown,
with a crown hanging off his head.
Yeah, that's what you think of.
It took me a second because I'm like, wait, why is that so familiar?
And it's not like the crown you would think of, like just the circlet thing.
Yes,
it's like the cartoony crown with the red,
it's so
like
funny
thing in the middle.
I might not have even seen that movie, but I saw that VHS cover in the video store and the new releases like section so much during like 1990 or whatever. Anyway,
I think it was one of those movies that like my parents rented at some point, right. So I saw bits and pieces of it. But
yeah.
Anyway, so John Jimson he edited that masterpiece.
And A Fish Called Wanda.
And A Fish Called Wanda, which Fish Called Wanda is really good, but
I've never seen it. But what's funny is I distinctly remember seeing the trailer for it in the theater, I think when I saw like Rain Man or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was something like that. I just remember the trailer, and it had uh who was in that movie? It was a bunch of people.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
it's Jamie Lee Curtis, John
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Cleese,
That's right.
Kevin Kline. Kevin
Kevin
Kline's
Kline.
really good in it. He's really
Right.
funny as
We'll
Otto.
tie that back into the conversation just to say that he was in Willow. And
Uh,
back to Lucasfilm.
Wait, Kevin Kline was in Willow?
Wasn't he? Oh, not Kevin Kline. I'm mixing him up with the comedian that plays one of the brownies.
Oh yeah. I know who you're
what's
talking
his
about.
name?
Well,
What's his name?
no, forget it. Okay, let's get back on track. John Gibson. I think
Oh gosh.
this is where it all comes from, because there was the initial edit by Jimson and it didn't work, and so he left the project, and then Lucas brought in Hirsch and Chu and Marcia, and then it
Kevin
doesn't
Pollak.
say, that's right, Kevin Pollak. There you
Kevin
go.
Pollak.
He's great. I love Kevin Pollak.
Yeah.
One of the brownies.
Yes.
So, but it's interesting because, like, when you read about it, they never like credit Lucas George as being an editor,
Right.
but you have to imagine he participated in it.
I think it's one of those things where if he already has the main credit of director, it might be a Directors Guild thing where they have to give the main
well,
credit.
but remember, I think he exited the guild over Star Wars, right?
No, he did, but there might be guild rules that still apply to the credits.
I get you, yeah.
So, okay, for example, also
because like Jurassic Park, he had a huge part in the post-production direction of that movie, but it's never mentioned. It's only ever like either hinted at or kind of overtly mentioned here and there, but it's not like, if you went to Wikipedia, if you went to IMDb, the credit would never be there, which also might be a Directors Guild type thing, because he's not in the guild. So maybe, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny too, when you look at the other movies too, and you realize who edited what, because as we've mentioned, maybe even on the show, Ben Burtt, of course, co-edited Phantom Menace, even though he's also the sound designer. So it's like he's doing double duty. And so
is that why the sound's so bad? Because he was too busy editing? That's a joke. That's a joke. Ben Burtt has never done wrong. Well, I shouldn't say he's never done wrong, but
he's the sound always
he's always that was a joke. I love Ben Burtt.
He got a little lazy on the R2D2 recycling.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves.
God damn it, Ben. He said that. He's not talking right. He said that in the other movie. That's not. I've translated the beeps.
Right.
I would get lazy too about that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to create all those beeps and bloops and everything.
Yeah, but that was a joke. I love his work on the prequels is great, and the Phantom is great. It's all great.
Anyway, do we have anything more to add about the Marcia Lucas, Lord and Savior of Star Wars?
Let's see. I think that was the last. There was just the three things, and so she wrote the foreword. I would love to know what the foreword says, because this comes from, I think all these excerpts that we've read come from the book itself.
Yeah, and I think the book is out now. I'm pretty sure, because I
think it was supposed to be out in April, and I think it kept getting delayed, and I think it just came out.
It might have been brushed up when Rinsler died. It might have been, they might have had to finish a few sections or something from the writer. But
yeah, there's not much to add. I thought it was interesting that I saw it on Reddit, and like literally every single time, if Star Wars or George gets mentioned outside of like a Star Wars subreddit, so if it gets mentioned on like our movies or somewhere else, someone's going to bring up that the only reason A New Hope was as good as it was is because of Marcia Lucas, and that's why everything else that Lucas has made has been complete shit, because he didn't have Marcia Lucas editing it, or if it was good, it's because of, Gary Kurtz, Kasdan, or it's Richard Marquand,
no one gives Lucas credit enough for all that he has done with Star Wars. going into the Clone Wars and everything. I feel like Lucas gets so much shit for almost singularly for the Phantom Menace by itself.
He really does. It's interesting. I was thinking about this in the kitchen earlier this evening. Did Gene Roddenberry have to deal with this shit when like Star Trek 3 came out? I mean,
yeah, I know, right?
I mean, he wasn't the director and stuff, but he was like
right.
the creative force behind Star Trek.
And
if there was a bum Star Trek movie that came out, did people all of a sudden like start shitting on him and stuff?
I don't think so in his case, from what I've
I mean, that was a rhetorical question. I know that they didn't.
But no, like for real, like they love to blame Paramount because that's a corporation that's faceless, and they can just kind of like, because they've also had so much control over Star Trek as a corporate entity, whereas Gene Roddenberry created it and he didn't retain control.
Right. That's true. I mean, Roddenberry didn't have the level of control that Lucas has.
No,
so
he was more of an advisor on different movies and such, but it is similar though. He was definitely the Lucas of Star Trek.
But he was never, I feel like Roddenberry was never like singled out as the punching bag for any particular problem with Star Trek.
No, and you know what? Also, part of that might be that he's been gone for so many years now that he's become mythologized.
That's true, yeah.
Because it was like, what, 89 or 90? Or no, it was 91. It was the year the Undiscovered Country came out. Yeah. I think that he passed.
Imagine, know, this would have been terrible for a lot of different reasons, but imagine if Lucas had died, like, even before, like, he had finished Revenge of the Sith, but it hadn't been released yet.
Right.
And he passed away.
It would be seen as this classic,
I think it would have.
Like,
I think
it would be revered more than it is as part of that trilogy.
I think everybody's hard edge on him and the prequels and anything else would have been softened a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps.
And it's already softened for Revenge of the Sith because and you know what? I think, in all honesty, I know you love Revenge of the Sith. I think that you said that's your favorite prequel and everything. But I feel like for casuals, I feel like the reason they say that, I don't think it's inherently that much different from Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones inherently. I think the reason casuals always love that one is because it has Darth Vader. Like Darth Vader. Or it's like, oh, Duel of the Fates is playing during the duel.
Yeah.
It's reasons like that. Whereas for me, I still feel like some of the praise that's heaped upon that one is kind of puffed up.
Well, it's because it had everything everybody was wanting to get to. Like, and Lucas has even said it, he's like, we can't start at Revenge of the Sith. You got to figure out how you get to that point with Anakin.
Right, and that's the thing. I think that's why I say casuals love it more, because casuals are looking
casuals.
They're looking for Wookiees and TIE fighters and familiar things that they know, and also Darth Vader as purely as a character. And it's the same thing with Rogue One. Even though his scene in Rogue One slaughtering the rebels was super badass and super cool, I still feel like that gets puffed up overtly just because it's Darth Vader doing something cool, and it's like, yeah, okay, right. But like, anytime Star Wars tries to do something new, let's hate it just because it doesn't have a fucking lightsaber, and that goes into my hatred of all this focus on Jedi for games and stories. Too much Jedi. Anyway, sorry. This is turning into a
calm down. We hit
Star Wars shit show. But yeah, it's just casuals, man. They bug me. Anyway,
filthy casuals.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was just something that occurred to me about the parallels between Star Trek and Star Wars and their creators and stuff. But I don't know. The hive mind in Reddit is very strong. As far as this stuff.
I guess we should wrap this up. It has
please
slogged along. So remember, everybody.
But before we do, so it's out now. The book. It's Howard Kazanjian. I hope I'm saying his name right.
I think so.
A Producer's Life. It was written by Rinsler.
A picture of him with a Raiders hat.
Yep, he's got
his
bandana around his neck. Presumably they're in the desert somewhere filming.
Tunisia.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tunisia.
Star Wars Canyon out there.
Anyway, so it's out now. Rinsler's final work, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Marcia Lucas wrote the foreword and stuff. I might have to pick this up and actually read it because it sounds like there's a lot of good stuff in it.
Yeah, it sounds like something we could cherry pick some more interesting, juicy quotations from.
Yeah, I want dirt on Raiders of the Lost Ark and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be cool. All right. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Remember to please check us out on YouTube, where you're likely hearing this right now, at Star Wars Unfiltered. Remember, you can send us any questions or comments at starwarsunfiltered@yahoo.com. We are on Facebook, and we also are on Instagram at Star Wars Unfiltered. And I'm starting to chip away at some more recent posts. We had a little bit of a break for a few weeks because, basically that's life, and got focused on other things. But
it's kind of, there was this huge buildup with the Bad Batch. I feel like this is the reason. Bad Batch, everything's like firing on all cylinders. Your
every
fandom.
week. Every week, yep.
Yeah, it's pumping you up, and then when something ends, it's kind of like when Revenge of the Sith ended. Then it's kind of like a lull.
And we have many lulls. That happens to me all the time, where I focus on other things and I get out of Star Wars, and that's why I get pumped up again, like today, for recording and talking about it. And it was a fun time, and we'll get back on the ball. There's going to be more games. We've been chipping away at Super Empire. That's coming. Super Star Wars is going to continue to have a few more video updates. Part 2 is coming in just a few days now, and everybody look forward to that. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Good night.
What?